Danny Garcia wiped the sweat from his forehead as he worked on the communication array aboard the mining ship. 3 months out of basic training, and he still felt like he didn't belong. Everyone else on the crew seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Danny just tried to keep the radios working and stay out of the way. The asteroid belt around Kepler 442 was supposed to be safe. No alien activity for years. Just rocks full of precious metals waiting to be harvested. Danny watched. The miners worked through the porthole, their suits glowing against the black space as they cut into the massive rock. "Garcia, you getting anything weird on the channels?" asked Sergeant Bill Murphy, the squad leader. Danny checked his screens. "Nothing, Sarge. All quiet." That's when the first explosion hit. The mining ship shook like a toy in an angry child's hands. Danny fell out of his chair, his headset flying across the small communications room. Red lights flashed everywhere. The ship's alarm screamed in his ears. What the hell was that? Murphy's voice crackled over the intercom. Danny scrambled back to his equipment. His training kicked in without him thinking about it. "Check the systems. Find out what's wrong. Keep everyone connected." He flipped switches and turned dials, trying to make sense of the chaos on his screens. "Sarge, we got company. 3 ships, unknown design. They came out of nowhere." "Pirates?" Danny looked at his readings again. The ships were big, too big for normal pirates, and they moved in perfect formation like military vessels. "I don't think so, Sarge. These guys look professional." Another explosion rocked the ship. This time Danny stayed in his seat. The main power flickered, and half his equipment went dark. He could hear Murphy shouting orders to the squad, but the intercom was cutting out. Danny stared at his broken equipment. In training, they taught him to follow procedures. Call for help, wait for orders. But his sergeant couldn't hear him, and there was no one else to call. The nearest human ship was 3 days away. He looked around the communications room. Spare parts everywhere. Backup power cells, emergency transmitters. His instructors always said he was good with his hands. Maybe too good. They wanted soldiers who followed orders, not mechanics who asked too many questions. But right now, nobody was giving orders. Danny started pulling cables and connecting circuits. He didn't have time to think about regulations or proper procedures. He just needed to make something work. Anything that could get a message out. "Garcia, where's my communications?" Murphy's voice came through a handheld radio, faint and full of static. "Working on it, Sarge. Give me 2 minutes." 2 minutes. Danny had never wired a long-range transmitter in 2 minutes. The manual said it took at least 20, with proper tools and a clean workspace. But the manual was written by people who weren't getting shot at. He bypassed 3 safety systems and connected the emergency beacon directly to the mining ship's main power core. Any instructor would have failed him for that. It was dangerous and completely against regulations, but it worked. The beacon came online with a sharp electronic whine. Danny quickly programmed in their location and a distress code. Then he did something else, something they never taught him in communication school. He turned the beacon into a weapon. The emergency transmitter was designed to punch through interference and reach friendly ships across vast distances. Danny realized it could also punch through enemy ship shields if he focused the signal correctly. He had about 30 seconds before the aliens figured out what he was doing. He aimed the focused signal at the lead attack ship and pushed the power to maximum. The alien vessel's lights flickered. Its formation wavered. "Sarge, tell everyone to get ready to move. I'm going to buy us some time, but it won't last long." Danny kept adjusting the signal, sweeping it across all 3 alien ships. Their engines started sparking. One ship veered off course and crashed into an asteroid. The other 2 backed away, clearly confused about what was happening to their systems. "Garcia, what did you do?" "I turned our distress beacon into a jamming device. It's overloading their electronics, but our power core can't handle this much longer." "How long do we have?" Danny looked at his improvised setup. Wires sparked and the smell of burning circuits filled the air. "Maybe 5 minutes before everything melts down." "Copy that. Everyone to the escape pods." But there was a problem. The mining ship only had 2 escape pods, and there were 8 people in the squad. Danny did the math quickly. If they followed standard evacuation procedures, half the squad wouldn't make it. unless someone stayed behind to manually launch the pods and coordinate the escape. Danny had never been in combat before. He had never made a life or death decision, but he knew what had to be done. "Sarge, I need to stay here. Someone has to work the launch controls and keep the beacon running." "Negative, Garcia. We don't leave people behind." "You're not leaving." "Me, Sarge. I'm making sure everyone else gets out." Danny sealed the communications room and started the pod launch sequence. Through his porthole, he watched the 2 escape pods drift away from the mining ship, carrying his squad to safety. The alien ships moved to follow them, but Danny hit them with another burst from his makeshift weapon. The aliens had to choose. Chase the escape pods or deal with the crazy human who was turning their own technology against them. They chose Danny. The boarding party that captured him 20 minutes later found him still at his post, still fighting. They had to cut through 3 makeshift barriers and disable 2 improvised traps before they could reach him. When they finally dragged him away, the communications room was completely destroyed, but the distress signal was still broadcasting. Danny Garcia, communications technician 3rd class, had held off a professional alien military unit for almost half an hour, using nothing but spare parts and determination. The aliens looked at their prisoner with something close to respect. This was clearly a human tactical specialist, probably trained in advanced warfare and electronic combat. They put him in maximum security with the other dangerous enemy commanders. Danny just hoped his squad made it home safely. Jake Sullivan was under the engine of the cargo freighter when the alarm started screaming. He rolled out from beneath the massive power unit, grease covering his work clothes, and looked around the engine room. Red lights flashed everywhere. "What now?" he muttered to himself. Jake had been fixing ships for 15 years. He was good at it, maybe too good. That's why Captain Rodriguez always called him when something broke down in the middle of nowhere. This time they were hauling medical supplies to a colony world when the hyperdrive started making weird noises. The ship shook hard, throwing Jake against a bulkhead. That wasn't engine trouble. That was weapons fire. "Jake, you down there?" "Captain." Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom, tight with worry. "Yeah, Cap, what's happening up there?" "Krell warships, 3 of them. They're demanding we surrender our cargo." Jake knew about the Krell. Bug-like aliens with 4 arms and a bad attitude. They didn't usually attack medical supply runs, but desperate times made everyone do stupid things. "How long before they board us?" "Maybe 10 minutes. Jake, I need you to do something for me. Destroy the engines. Don't let them have our ship." Jake looked around the engine room. It was his life's work keeping these old freighters running. The idea of destroying perfectly good machinery made his stomach hurt, but he understood. Better to wreck the ship than let pirates use it to hurt innocent people. "Copy that, Cap. Give me 5 minutes." But as Jake started pulling power couplings, he had a different idea. Instead of destroying the engines, what if he could use them as weapons? The cargo freighter was old and slow, but it had powerful engines designed to push heavy loads across long distances. Jake had always thought they were over-engineered. Too much power for what the ship needed. But right now, maybe that extra power could save their lives. He started rerouting engine output to the ship's external lights and communication array. It was crazy and dangerous. If he made a mistake, the whole ship could explode. But Jake had been modifying engines since he was 12 years old. His hands moved without his brain having to think about it. The first Krell boarding pod hit the cargo bay just as Jake finished his work. He could hear the aliens cutting through the hull with their plasma torches. Captain Rodriguez and the crew were probably already prisoners. Jake sealed himself in the engine room and activated his improvised weapon system. The ship's external lights, now powered by the main engines, flared bright enough to blind anyone looking directly at them. The communication array sent out a focused electromagnetic pulse that scrambled electronic systems within 100 meters. The cutting sounds from the cargo bay stopped. Jake heard confused alien voices shouting in their clicking language. Through the security cameras, Jake watched Krell warriors stumbling around the corridors, their helmet displays flickering and failing. Their plasma weapons wouldn't fire. Even their breathing apparatus was acting up. But Jake wasn't done. He had spent years learning how cargo ships worked inside and out. He knew every pipe, every cable, every maintenance shaft. and he knew how to make the ship do things it was never designed to do. He started flooding certain sections with harmless but irritating gas from the life support system. He turned the artificial gravity up and down in different areas, making the aliens sick and confused. He even played loud music through the intercom system, drowning out their ability to communicate with each other. The Krell had probably boarded hundreds of ships before. They expected frightened civilians who would surrender quickly. They didn't. Expect one human mechanic to turn their own ship into a maze of traps and surprises. Jake kept them busy for 6 hours. Every time they thought they had figured out his tricks, he came up with something new. He flooded a corridor with coolant, making it too slippery to walk on. He overloaded the lighting in another section, creating a strobe effect that made the bug-like aliens dizzy. He even managed to lock several groups of Krell in storage compartments by reversing the door controls. Finally, a human patrol ship arrived, drawn by Jake's earlier distress signal. The Krell, frustrated and exhausted from hours of fighting a ship that seemed to fight back by itself, surrendered without a battle. When the rescue team found Jake, he was still in the engine room, surrounded by dozens of improvised devices and jury-rigged systems. The entire ship had been turned into a weapon using nothing but spare parts and mechanical knowledge. The Krell commander looked at Jake with something close to fear. This human had fought an entire boarding party to a standstill, using only the ship's own systems. Clearly he was some kind of specialist in defensive warfare and psychological operations. The Krell classified Jake as a master strategist and put him in their highest security prison. Jake just wanted to go home and fix engines in peace. 3 sectors away, Dr. Lisa Park was having her own problems. The medical ship she worked on had been captured while delivering vaccines to refugee camps. The rigid hierarchy of Zephon had taken everyone prisoner, but they didn't seem to know what to do with their captives. Lisa was a doctor, not a soldier, but she had organized field hospitals in war zones and refugee camps. She knew how to make order out of chaos, how to keep people alive when resources were short, and how to maintain hope when everything looked hopeless. The alien prison was badly designed. Too many prisoners crammed into too small a space. Not enough food or water. No medical care, no organization. People were starting to panic, and panic could kill faster than alien weapons. Lisa started small. She convinced the guards to let her treat injured prisoners. That gave her an excuse to move around the prison and talk to everyone. She quietly organized the humans into work groups. Some people gathered information about guard schedules and prison routines. Others started rationing the little food they had. A few began planning escape routes. Within a week, the human section of the prison ran like a well-oiled machine. Everyone had a job. Everyone looked out for everyone else. Morale stayed high even though conditions were terrible. The hierarchy guards watched in amazement. Their own soldiers couldn't organize this efficiently. This human female had turned a group of panicked civilians into a disciplined unit. She was obviously trained in prisoner management and psychological warfare. They moved Dr. Lisa Park to maximum security and assigned her a special guard unit. Another human commander to add to their growing collection. All across the galaxy, the same thing was happening. Humans were being captured and immediately classified as high-level military threats, regardless of their actual jobs or training, and the aliens couldn't understand why. Admiral Helen Ross stared at the report spread across her desk. Something was very wrong with these prisoner exchange records. Every human captured by alien forces in the past year had been classified as a high-value target. Every single one. "Commander Stone, come in here," she called to her aide. Rick Stone entered the office carrying another stack of files. He looked as confused as Helen felt. "Ma'am, I've got more reports from the diplomatic corps. The aliens are asking for ridiculous exchange rates. They want 10 of their officers back for every human prisoner we return. 10 to 1? For a communications technician? That's what they're asking for Private Garcia. The Vextai are treating him like he's a general." Helen picked up another file. "What about the mechanic, Jake Sullivan?" The Krell want to trade their entire captured engineering team for him. 12 specialists for one human ship repairman. Helen had been fighting wars for 30 years. She knew the value of prisoners, and she knew alien psychology better than most humans. None of this made sense. Rick, I want you to put together a team, find out what's going on, talk to our returned prisoners, study every alien communication we can get our hands on. There's a pattern here, and I need to understand it. 2 weeks later, Rick sat in the briefing room with his investigation team. Dr. Carl Hayes, the fleet's expert on alien behavior, had files scattered everywhere. Intelligence Officer Nancy Wright was reading through intercepted alien messages. Tech Specialist Bob Chen was pulling up prisoner facility schematics on the main screen. What do we know? Rick asked. Carl spoke first. I've interviewed 43 returned human prisoners. All of them report the same thing. Maximum security treatment, premium food, personal guards, the works. Even the civilians. Civilians? A school teacher named Amy Chen. She was captured during a colony raid. The aliens put her in their most secure facility and assigned her a guard detail usually reserved for enemy generals. Nancy looked up from her translation work. The intercepted communications are even stranger. Listen to this Vextai transmission. Human prisoner demonstrates advanced tactical awareness despite claiming to be simple food preparation specialist. Recommend highest security protocols. Food preparation specialist? That's Tony Martinez, he's a cook. But according to the aliens, he fought off their boarding party using kitchen equipment and improvised weapons. They think he's some kind of close combat expert. Bob pulled up security footage from an alien prison facility. Look at this. Human prisoners getting escort details, private cells, even exercise equipment. The aliens are spending enormous amounts of money and manpower guarding people who should be low-security prisoners. Rick studied the footage. It showed Danny Garcia in what looked like a luxury hotel room compared to the cramped cells where alien prisoners were kept. What do the aliens think they're guarding against? Carl had been working on that question for days. I think I have a theory, but it sounds crazy. Let's hear it. What if the aliens can't tell the difference between trained soldiers and regular humans? What if everything we consider normal human behavior looks like advanced military training to them? Rick frowned. What do you mean? Think about it. Danny Garcia jury-rigged a communication system under combat conditions. Jake Sullivan turned a cargo ship into a defensive weapon using spare parts. Dr. Lisa Park organized a prison population into an efficient survival network. Tony Martinez used kitchen tools as weapons. So, people do what they have to do to survive. Exactly. But what if that's not normal? What if most alien species don't have that kind of adaptability? Nancy put down her translation files. Carl might be onto something. Look at these military assessments from different alien civilizations. They all describe the same thing. Humans display command-level tactical thinking regardless of stated rank. Individual initiative beyond acceptable parameters. Unpredictable problem-solving abilities. Bob brought up organizational charts from various alien military forces. Look at how their armies work. Strict hierarchy. Soldiers follow orders, period. No independent thinking, no improvisation. Everyone has a specific job and they never deviate from it. Carl nodded. Their military leaders are specially trained and carefully selected. Maybe only 1 in 1,000 has the kind of creative thinking that would let them adapt to new situations. But humans? We all think like that. Rick was starting to understand. So when they capture a human who can improvise and adapt and solve problems under pressure, they assume that human must be one of the rare individuals trained for command positions. Because in their society, only commanders can think that way. Nancy pulled out more translated documents. This Krell intelligence brief says it perfectly. Human military structure appears designed to provide command-level training to all personnel. Recommend treating every human prisoner as potential tactical threat. They think our entire military is made up of officers, Rick said slowly. Not just our military, Carl corrected. Our entire species. Listen to this hierarchy of Zephon. Report. Human civilian populations demonstrate strategic thinking patterns consistent with military leadership training. Possible explanation. Humans may not distinguish between military and civilian castes. Bob laughed, despite the seriousness of the situation. They think we're all soldiers because we can all think for ourselves. Rick gathered up the files. Admiral Ross needed to hear this immediately. So the aliens are right in a way. Every human is capable of acting like a commander when they need to. But they're wrong about why, Carl said. They think it's because we're all specially trained. They don't understand that it's just how humans are built. We adapt. We improvise. We survive. Nancy was still reading through alien communications. There's more. Some of the younger alien civilizations are starting to change their military training because of us. They're trying to teach their soldiers to think independently and improvise solutions. Are they succeeding? Not really. Thousands of years of evolutionary programming is hard to overcome, but they're trying. Rick stood up. I need to brief the Admiral. This changes everything about how we handle prisoner exchanges. As the team filed out of the briefing room, Carl stopped at the door. Rick, there's one more thing. If we're right about this, then the aliens aren't just overestimating our prisoners. They're underestimating their own people. Maybe their soldiers could learn to think creatively too if given the chance. Rick nodded. That's a problem for the diplomats to figure out. Right now, we need to focus on getting our people home. But as he walked toward the Admiral's office, Rick couldn't shake the feeling that they had discovered something important about humanity's place in the galaxy. Something that went far beyond prisoner exchanges and military tactics. Maybe being human meant something different than they had ever realized. General Vexicol clicked his mandibles in frustration as he read the latest intelligence report. 3 more human prisoners had been captured, and all 3 were displaying the same impossible behavior patterns. A janitor who had turned cleaning supplies into explosive devices. A librarian who had organized a resistance cell using nothing but books about military history. A farm worker who had built defensive positions out of agricultural equipment. This makes no sense, he muttered to his aide, Commander Zeftai. These humans claim to be civilians, but they fight like our most elite warriors. Zeftai pulled up holographic displays showing human prisoner files. Sir, intelligence suggests their military training system is far more advanced than we initially believed. Every human appears to receive command-level education from birth. From birth? Yes, sir, we've monitored human children. Even their youngest demonstrate tactical thinking and problem-solving abilities that match our officer candidates. Their educational facilities appear to be military academies disguised as civilian schools. General Vexcall studied the reports. In Vextai society, warriors were bred and trained from egg-laying. The idea that an entire species could possess military-grade thinking was terrifying. What does Central Command recommend? Maximum security for all human prisoners, regardless of claimed rank or profession. They're all considered potential escape risks and tactical threats. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening in alien command centers everywhere. Admiral Thrakhul of the Krell Empire paced in his war room, his forearms gesturing angrily at the tactical displays. How can humans have so many commanders? Their military structure makes no sense. His intelligence officer, Captain Morgtai, brought up comparison charts. Sir, our analysis shows that human military organization is completely different from ours. We believe they may not have separate castes for workers and warriors. Impossible. How would they maintain order? Unknown, sir, but the evidence is clear. Human mechanics can build weapons from spare parts. Human doctors can organize military-style operations. Human cooks can fight hand-to-hand combat using kitchen tools. Either they're all lying about their ranks or their entire society is militarized. Admiral Thrakhul studied the files of captured humans. Each one showed the same pattern: creative thinking, adaptability, leadership skills, tactical awareness. In Krell society, these abilities were found only in the highest-ranking officers. How many human prisoners do we currently hold? 47, sir. All classified as high-value targets, and they're all claiming to be civilians or low-ranking soldiers? Yes, sir, but their actions prove otherwise. This mechanic, Jake Sullivan, held off an entire boarding party for 6 hours using only ship systems. That level of defensive strategy requires years of specialized training. Admiral Thrakul's translator had difficulty with human concepts, but the facts were clear. Issue new orders. All human prisoners are to be treated as enemy commanders. Full security protocols. We cannot risk underestimating them again. In the sterile halls of the hierarchy of Zephan's Intelligence Center, Director Quindal reviewed the latest psychological assessments of human prisoners. The hierarchy prided itself on understanding alien behavior patterns, but humans were proving impossible to categorize. Research leader Tamris, explain these anomalies, Quindal commanded. Tamris activated a holographic display showing brain scans and behavioral analysis. Director, human neural patterns show unusual activity in areas associated with strategic planning and creative problem solving. But these patterns appear in all humans, not just their military personnel. All humans? Yes, Director. We've scanned prisoners claiming to be teachers, mechanics, farmers, and medical personnel. They all show the same cognitive patterns as our most senior military strategists. Quindal studied the data. In hierarchy society, citizens were genetically modified at birth for specific roles. Workers could not think like leaders. Leaders could not perform manual labor. The system had maintained order for thousands of years. Are you suggesting that humans are not specialized by caste? The evidence suggests that humans may have evolved without rigid specialization. Their brains appear capable of multiple functions simultaneously. That would explain their unpredictable behavior in captivity. Traditional psychological warfare techniques don't work on them because they don't think like normal prisoners. Tamris pulled up video files from human detention facilities. Observe this human female, Dr. Lisa Park. She organized fellow prisoners into an efficient survival network within days of capture. She demonstrated leadership abilities, resource management, skills and morale maintenance protocols typically found only in our command structure, and her claimed profession? Medical doctor. But our analysis shows she possesses tactical knowledge equivalent to our prison administration specialists. Quindal made a decision that would change hierarchy military doctrine. Issue a new classification. Protocol. All humans are to be considered potential command personnel. Their society appears to train every individual for leadership roles. The most detailed analysis came from the Thrakari Intelligence Network, known throughout the galaxy for their thorough research methods. Director Shalveth had spent months studying human prisoners and their behavior patterns. The human military deception is extraordinary, she reported to the High Council. They've managed to convince multiple alien civilizations that their warriors are simple civilians and technicians. Council leader Mordain leaned forward in his floating chair. Explain. Humans claim to have non-military castes, but our observations prove otherwise. Every captured human demonstrates combat readiness, strategic thinking, and leadership capabilities. The most logical explanation is that their entire society functions as a military unit. You believe their farmers and teachers are actually soldiers? Not soldiers, sir. Commanders. Every human we've encountered can make command-level decisions under pressure. They improvise solutions to complex problems. They organize other prisoners. They adapt to new situations without requiring orders from superiors. Mordain studied the reports. This is unprecedented. An entire species trained for command positions? Yes, sir, and it explains their effectiveness in warfare. When every individual can think strategically, their military becomes unpredictable and extremely dangerous. Shalveth activated a holographic display showing human prisoner facilities across multiple worlds. Sir, I recommend that we update our threat assessment protocols. Human prisoners require resources equivalent to our highest-ranking enemy officers. Because they are all officers, regardless of what they claim. Exactly, sir. Their rank insignia may be deceptive, but their capabilities are real. The Council voted unanimously to implement the new protocols. Every human prisoner would be treated as a potential escape risk and tactical threat. Better to overspend on security than underestimate human capabilities. What none of the alien civilizations understood was that they weren't wrong about human capabilities. They were wrong about why humans had those capabilities. They assumed it was training and military organization. They never considered that it might just be human nature. To them, the idea that an entire species could think independently, solve problems creatively, and adapt to new situations was so foreign that they could only explain it through military conditioning. The concept of individual initiative as a natural trait was completely outside their understanding. As reports continued to flow in from prisoner facilities across the galaxy, one thing became clear to every alien military commander. Humans were unlike any species they had ever encountered. And until they understood why, every human would be treated as a potential threat to galactic security. Admiral Helen Ross smiled as she reviewed the mission files. Operation Underestimate was ready to begin. If the aliens wanted to treat every human as a military commander, she would give them exactly what they expected. Commander Stone, are our volunteers ready? Rick nodded. Yes, ma'am. Pete Johnson from the University Library, Mary Lopez from the Accounting Department, and Greg White from Lincoln High School. All civilians with no military training. Perfect. And they understand the plan? They know they're going to be captured on purpose. What they don't know is that the aliens will treat them like special forces operatives and put them in maximum security with our other people. Helen looked at the intelligence reports one more time. The Zenthari Collective operated the most secure prison facility in this sector of space. They held 43 human prisoners, all classified as high-value commanders. If her plan worked, those prisoners would soon be free. 3 days later, Pete Johnson sat in the cargo hold of a transport ship, trying not to look nervous. At 52 years old, he had spent his entire career organizing information and helping students with research. The idea of being captured by aliens terrified him, but he understood why this mission was important. Remember, Captain Williams told him, just be yourself. Don't try to act military. Let them draw their own conclusions. The transport ship accidentally strayed into Zenthari space and was quickly captured. Pete, Mary, and Greg were taken prisoner exactly as planned. What happened next exceeded all expectations. The Zenthari prison commander, Director Veltash, studied the new human prisoners with interest. Intelligence reports suggested these three were part of a human infiltration team, probably special operations specialists disguised as civilians. Process them as high-security prisoners, Veltash ordered. Full commander-level protocols. Pete found himself in a luxurious cell next to Danny Garcia, the communications specialist who had started this whole mystery. They're treating us like generals, Danny explained. Private bathrooms, good food, exercise equipment, the works. Why? Because they think we're all military commanders. Every human in here is supposedly a tactical expert or strategic specialist, Pete looked around at his fellow prisoners. He recognized some faces from the news reports. Jake Sullivan, the mechanic, Dr. Lisa Park, the medical officer, Tony Martinez, the cook. Regular people who had done extraordinary things when circumstances demanded it. What's the security like? Pete asked. Danny grinned. That's the beautiful part. Because they treat us like VIPs, we get access to areas of the prison that regular prisoners never see. Guard schedules, facility layouts, supply routes. The aliens are so busy showing us respect that they're giving us everything we need to plan an escape. Mary Lopez was having similar thoughts in the women's section. As an accountant, she was used to analyzing systems and finding inefficiencies. The Zenthari prison had plenty of both. The guards rotated shifts every 8 hours, but there was a 15-minute gap during shift changes when certain corridors were unmonitored. Food deliveries came twice a day at predictable times. Maintenance. Crews had access to the entire facility, but were never searched or questioned. Within a week, Mary had mapped out the entire prison's operational schedule. She knew when guards took breaks, when supplies were delivered, and when the facility was most vulnerable. Information that would have taken months to gather was handed to her on a silver platter because the aliens thought she was some kind of intelligence specialist. Greg White was working his own angle. As a high school teacher, he knew how to manage groups of people and get them to work together toward common goals. The human prisoners were smart and motivated, but they needed coordination. Started with simple conversation during exercise periods, casual questions about everyone's skills and background. Soon he had a complete inventory of what the prisoners could contribute to an escape plan. Jake Sullivan could disable security systems and jury-rig transportation. Dr. Lisa Park could handle medical emergencies and keep everyone calm under pressure. Tony Martinez knew about food storage and could identify which supplies would be needed for a long journey. Danny Garcia could handle communications and jamming alien systems. We're not just prisoners, Greg realized. We're a complete tactical team, and the aliens put us all in the same place. The escape plan came together naturally. Pete used his research skills to study Xanthari technology and find weaknesses in their security systems. Mary calculated optimal timing and resource allocation. Greg coordinated the different groups and maintained morale. On the night of the escape, everything went perfectly. Jake disabled the electronic locks during a scheduled maintenance window that Mary had identified. Pete had discovered that the prison's backup power system had a design flaw that could be exploited. Dr. Lisa kept everyone calm and organized while Tony managed their limited supplies. Danny used his communications knowledge to jam the prison's alarm system. Greg made sure everyone knew their assignments and stuck to the timeline. Mary's precise calculations got them past guard stations at exactly the right moments. The most heavily fortified prison in Xanthari space was compromised by a librarian, an accountant, and a high school teacher, working together with other, ordinary, humans who had been classified as dangerous military specialists. 46 human prisoners walked out of the facility and made it to a rescue ship that Pete had managed to contact, using his research into Xanthari communication protocols. The entire operation took less than 4 hours and was executed with military precision. The Xanthari were baffled. Their most secure facility had been defeated by what they could only assume was an elite human special forces team. The escape plan was so sophisticated that Xanthari military academies later studied it as an example of advanced tactical coordination. But the truth was simpler and more profound. The humans had succeeded because they were exactly what the aliens thought. They were commanders, not because of military training, but because being human meant being able to think, adapt, and work together when survival was at stake. News of the Great Escape spread throughout the galaxy. Alien civilizations finally began to understand that they had been right about human capabilities but wrong about the reasons. Humans didn't have a separate military caste because every human was capable of military-level thinking when necessary. The Galactic Prisoner Exchange Treaty was amended to include the human clause, acknowledging that all humans possessed inherent command capabilities and required special handling. Ironically, by trying to contain what they saw as dangerous military minds, the aliens had proved that every human really was capable of thinking like a commander. Admiral Ross received the after-action reports with satisfaction. Operation Underestimate had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. But more importantly, humanity had learned something valuable about itself. In a galaxy full of specialized castes and rigid hierarchies, humans were unique. They were a species where every individual could lead when leadership was needed. The galaxy would never underestimate human prisoners again. But they still didn't fully understand what made humans so dangerous. It wasn't their military training or their weapons or their technology. It was simply their refusal to give up, their ability to adapt, and their natural instinct to think for themselves. In short, it was just being human.